Gentlemen, it is Wednesday, January 27th, and it is 6 p.m. I am going to call the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners January meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I apologize, people, I did this in the wrong order. I neglected the invocation. Okay? So if we could all take a moment. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the wonderful, wonderful quality of life we have here in Grand Traverse County and the many recreational opportunities and the citizens stepping up to boards to serve others. Amen. All right. Roll call.
Johnson?
Here. Drink a drink of water.
Crawford?
Here.
Klaus?
Here.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Kropa?
Here.
Lathrop? Max Bauer?
Here.
Lathrop is excused tonight.
Yes, he is. All right, next on the agenda is approval of the minutes for December 22nd, December 29th, and January 4th. Are there any changes, additions, deletions to those minutes? Hearing none, they stand approved. This is our first opportunity for public comment. Ms. Bonnie, please read the rules.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. Chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak.
Would anyone like to make public comment? Please come forward to the podium. And if you would kindly introduce yourself.
My name is Philip Asplin, and I live here in Traverse City at 814 Center Street, and I have lived in the area for the past 20 years. I've worked in the general area since 1980, but I never thought I would ever have to come here to speak to you people. I've seen a lot of your pictures in the paper, so I recognize many faces. But I had an incident at the county jail on Sunday evening that is still I'm in shock about, and I was advised by the jail personnel to come here and speak to you people. The situation is that I have gone into the Grand Traverse County Jail for the past 17 years on a voluntary basis, conducting a program for drug and alcohol rehabilitation under the auspices of Alcoholics for Christ. And I've thoroughly enjoyed doing it, and it has been a real blessing to me. I believe it has been a real blessing to many people, and I very much believe in the program. In fact, when I'm done, if anybody is interested in my case and cause, this is the packet of material I had ready but was not delivered due to the fact that I was met at the door and said my program had been eliminated. Just boom. And the girl told me, she goes, "Didn't anyone call you?" And I said, "No, I didn't hear from anyone." She goes, "Well, you can call Todd Ritter in the morning." So I did that, and I've met him before, and I want to say that in the 17 years I've been there, the jail staff has been perfectly kind and gracious to me, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And in the 17 years, I've never, ever left there once disappointed that I've done it. And in the 17 years, I've done approximately 500 meetings. Each one, I've prepared an outline for it, and there's an attendance list. And I've kind of calculated, and I think I've spoken with maybe 5,000 people in the last 17 years, and many of them I see on the streets. They acknowledge me. A lot of times I don't recognize them because they look so much different on the outside than in the jail. And I believe that the reason for the meeting is to bring people some hope. Many of them there, I think, really don't have much hope, and that's been our mission. And I talked to Todd Ritter, and he said, it's not you, Philip, it's the budget. And he goes, we had 7 programs coming in here, and we're eliminating about 4 or 5 of them, including the GED program. I don't know if you were aware of that or not, but my thought is if you can't get your GED in jail, you know, where are you going to get it? But the reason I'm here is that Todd advised me, he said if you want to talk to somebody about it, go to the commission.
You can keep going.
So I'm here to ask for some help. I don't know in what way. I feel that the program is very valuable, and it's voluntary. I've done it for 17 years, and a gentleman that got me started it in 1988. He died in 2011. I have a partner who has helped me since then. He wasn't able to be here because he had another commitment. But I've worked at Amicall for the last 20 years, so I hashed it over with Dave Dennison, my boss, and he advised me not to badmouth the jail, which I'm not here to do that. But it just seems foolish to me that, you know, a voluntary program, just boom, you're gone. I don't know. I'm perplexed. Is there anything at all that you people can do to help me get back in there?
We generally do not respond to public comment, and but here, if you want to give me a call.
Okay. And would you be willing to just take a look at this? I'll leave it with you.
Sure.
All right. But I'd like it back.
Okay.
You may not understand all my notes, but I do.
All right.
So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming, and give me a call.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Gordy LaPointe, 6375 Plum Drive in Acme. My comments are specific to one of the agenda items that's on this evening for the resolution to move forward, at least with drawing up the language for a tax, a millage tax for the Department of Veterans Affairs. I can either make my comment now, or if there would be an opportunity when that resolution comes forward, I prefer to make the comments then. So it's
Mr. LaPointe, that's your choice. We will certainly allow that.
Thank you, I'll do it.
It's a consent
It's on the
calendar.
consent
So
calendar.
Well, we'll
have
pull
to
it.
have removed.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that you're going to pull that item from the consent calendar.
Oh, okay, I will pull it from the consent calendar. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, moving on to approval of the agenda. I have, in addition to the agenda, something I know many of you truly enjoy. It is going to be under old business, letter B, and it is our resolutions for board appointments that we have already made. This is just a housekeeping matter. So with that addition to the agenda, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Commissioner Kropa, supported by Commissioner Crawford. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. We have an agenda. Next is the consent calendar. Bonnie?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency Incorporated minutes of November 19th. Number 2, Grand Traverse County Department of Human Services minutes of November 30th. Number 3, Board of Public Works Finance Committee minutes of December 2nd. Number 4, Central Dispatch Policy Board minutes of December 10th. Number 5, Board of Public Works minutes of December 10th. Approvals. The Public Health and Safety Committee did not meet in January. The Resource Management and Administration Committee recommends approval of the following: Number 6, Resource Recovery 2016 hauler licenses. Number 7, Veteran Services Operational Millage. Number 8, Medical Service Agreement Grand Traverse County Jail. The Ways and Means Committee recommends approval of the following. Number 9, ESRI GIS Software Support Maintenance Renewal. Number 10, Confirmation of Appointments City of Traverse City. Number 11, Budget Adjustments. Number 12, Defined Contribution Plan for Commissioners.
All right. Aside from Mr. Lapointe and item B7, would anyone from the public like an item removed from the consent calendar? Commissioners? Staff? All right. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item B7.
Madam Chairman, I would move to approve the consent calendar with the item B7 removed, please.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Wheelock, supported by Commissioner Klaus. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next, we have a special order of business, public hearing for revolving loan fund application from Kajara's Bridge. Mr. Syke?
Good evening, John Syke, Grand Traverse County Planning and Development Director. Along with me tonight is Laura Galbraith from Venture North, which is the funding arm of Traverse Connect. And what you have presented for you this evening is a public hearing for revolving loan fund application. This is actually the first of 2 steps that need to be taken by the board. There's no action requested by the board tonight. This is just a public hearing. Once it goes through the public participation process, then there will be a resolution that will have to be done by the board following that process. What I'd like to do is if Laura could at least address you and the public to explain a little bit about what that application is before you go into open up the public hearing.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for letting me have a chance to speak about this loan application. So the company, Kajara's Bridge, is also known as Redheads. They are based in Lake Leelanau. They've had a restaurant for a little over 20 years now, and they're looking to expand their operations to Grand Traverse County. They're going to be a tenant in Cherry Capital Foods. There is a group of other value-added agriculture small business entrepreneurs that are tenants in that particular building. The intent of the loan fund is to find Grand Traverse County businesses who are seeking capital and are planning to hire low to moderate income individuals. So this particular loan request is for $175,000. In the Part 1 application that was distributed to you in advance, it did outline what the funds will be used for, but primarily it'll be for working capital. This particular company is going to be purchasing bulk items for their inventory and then additional capital for them to be able to continue their production. The process for the public participation is we hold the public hearing tonight. We have 15 days for the public to comment on the project. We've identified in the announcement that John Syke would be the point of contact here at the county if anybody wanted to ask questions or receive comments. Venture North, myself, or even the owner of Kajara's Bridge, Sarah Landry, would be available to answer questions if there were any questions about the expansion. They will be hiring 6 full-time positions over the course of 2 years. Of which 51% of these individuals will be considered low to moderate income. And we have the next step after the 15-day process is to ask the board to enter into a resolution, and we would be able to move forward with the environmental review and finishing some of the other due diligence that needs to take place.
Thank you, Laura. Do any commissioners have any questions for Laura or John before I open the public hearing? Hearing none, I will officially open the public hearing. Would anyone from the public care to speak regarding this loan application?
I do have a question then.
Sure.
How long does this loan go on for? When's the payback on the loan?
This particular request, we're looking for a 5-year payback. but we have the ability, loan committee makes the final determination on how long that particular loan will be. So we had one other loan that came forth to you last year, I think it was about over a year and 2 months ago. And it's case-by-case basis that loan committee makes a determination. We do have a representation from Grand Traverse County, and John Syke is the representative that sits on our loan committee, so that they're able to have a vote in whether or not we fund the project.
Anyone else?
Is this organization requesting a tax abatement also, or strictly an EDC loan?
Just a loan, yep.
All right. Going once, going twice before I close the public hearing. I will officially close the public hearing. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
All right, next on the agenda, items removed from the consent calendar. Item B7, Mr. Lapointe.
Did we have to vote on?
Yeah, I was going to say, don't
You?
you need to vote on
Oh, I'm sorry.
Signing?
Hang on just a minute. Thank you.
Am I right, Chris? or
I don't
am
think so. I thought we only had to open the public hearing and have the public hearing.
It says that they're asking for the board to authorize submittal of application. Furthermore, that Christine Maxbauer is
The
authorized
only
to
requirement
sign.
of the board is to hold a public hearing for the application. That's what it says on mine.
So you can
There
say-
will be a resolution, an authorizing resolution that will come back
That's
to you
coming.
after the public
Okay,
participation
I just wanted to make
process.
sure we didn't leave you hanging there.
Thank you, I appreciate
Okay.
that. I'm sorry, Mr. Lapointe.
Again, thank you. I've sent most of you an email, and I've got responses back from several of you, so I assume you've read it, so I won't go over the gist of what I had said in the email, but basically, I have some real concerns about the path you're currently on with raising taxes. This is being billed as a tax for the Veterans, Department of Veterans Affairs, but in reality, as was discussed at the last board meeting, which prompted me to write the email, this is really a tax which is going to replenish the general fund. Now, let me just go over a little bit of, I got 2.5 minutes here. This was discussed in mid-December, and it was just preliminary discussion about, basically, as I recall from that discussion, the department was saying that they've asked for additional monies over the last several years. They do all this great work for the veterans, which nobody can deny, and there apparently wasn't any money available for an increase going forward. And that was pretty much the gist of the conversation, along with the fact that some other counties do in fact have millages to support the Department of Veterans Affairs. So the discussion that I took away from that, and I know several others, was that there may be a millage coming forward to raise additional money to add to the monies currently spent by that organization. A few days later in the newspaper, it appeared an article where they were quoting Commissioner Johnson, who said, no, in fact, what we'll do is we'll eliminate the allocation from the general fund and fund that department exclusively through this millage. So the bulk of the money is not going to be going for incremental increase to the veterans. It's going to go back into the general fund to solve the infamous budget deficit. Now, getting back on script, you know, a little more than a year ago, there was a discussion about the 9/11 surcharge increase, which is very similar to this whole situation. And I'd like to quote a few of the commissioners who are presently here in the comments they made about this concept of having a tax you're going to sell to the public is for one thing, but in fact, you're going to replenish the general fund. The comment was, you don't fix systemic budget deficits on the backs of the taxpayers. And we do have a systemic budget deficit here. Budget issues need to be addressed by making the tough decisions to cut costs. And then followed up, the next year that we have a structural deficit, do we pick another department and another one after that? Well, unfortunately, I think we've got that answer. In 1 year's time, we have the answer. The board has reached the point where a new tax is in fact on the table. And many of you ran strongly against that. You were going to make the tough decisions going forward that you felt the previous boards hadn't made.
You please finish up,
Okay.
but yes.
I guess in the long and the short of it is, this is a bait and switch. I've talked to a number of people about how this is going to go down, and clearly the voters, when they try to read a millage, they're going to think this is incremental income to the veterans, when 80 to 90% of it is not going to go to the veterans. It's going to go to the general fund to solve other issues. Thank you. I hope you would really reconsider this and think back to the promise you made the taxpayers when you were all out there campaigning a few short months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lapointe. Is there a motion?
Since it's a consent calendar item, can I make a comment?
Well, certainly.
I apologize, I have not answered you. I've been a little under the weather. I am by far the biggest opponent to the 911 surcharge. But I was very poorly interpreted by the Record Eagle. I was not opposed to the 911 surcharge. I was opposed to the selling of it for buying a radio system when in fact they were plugging a budget gap. I wasn't on the board when that got put on, so I didn't get a chance to vote on it, but as a citizen I spoke. Now I'm on this board, and I don't think it's my choice to decide what people can vote on. I will vote for any legally worded millage that a citizens group comes forward with that wants to give the voters the chance to vote on it. Will I personally vote for it? I voted for one millage in my whole life, so we'll see, right? But that's not my job as a county commissioner to decide who gets to decide what the issues are to vote. My job is to make sure that our prosecutor's office has formed the language properly. My job is to make sure that if it's by citizen-driven petition, that the petitions are done properly with the clerk's office. My job is not to say, nope, I don't think anybody gets to pick. But the one thing I will make sure is that it is sold properly, and I don't think you've had a chance to let us do that yet because, unfortunately, the Ticker and the Record Eagle don't always get it right. We didn't get a chance to discuss the fact that this, in my opinion, will be sold as a budget gap filler. Now, does that mean I support it? Does that mean I'm going to vote for it? That's not what our role is. Our role is to approve ballot language going on to it. Now, thanks to Senate Bill 571, none of you will ever know what I think about it, nor any of us in this room. But the point was, I think you misinterpreted at least what I said at the last meeting, and I apologize for not having the time to write this down. But it is our job as the Board of Commissioners to make sure that the law is followed and citizen ballot initiatives go on. That's it. So if the language is done properly and it is appropriately advertised by the groups that Senate Bill 571 allows it to, that it is something that in fact replaces the general fund, then the citizens have the right to go to the ballot and vote yes or no. I'm one of them, and I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to vote. 911 was different. They sold it wrong. And they did a disservice to our citizens because of that, and that's why I was angry. I wasn't angry that the County Board of Commissioners put it on. I think everybody has the right to choose how their tax dollars are spent, and what better way than a millage vote. But I don't think that I won't allow, if this veterans millage goes to the ballot and we get to vote, I won't allow it to be sold wrong. I can promise you that. That was the promise I made during campaign season. Can't speak for the other people. This will be sold properly. Now, whether it is appropriate to budget gap, because it was my quote that you read, no, I don't think so. But that's not my job. My job is to vote to allow something that's legally done on the ballot. I'm not sitting here to sell it or say it's right. That's all. And I want to make sure that that's clear, that what our role is the County Board of Commissioners in the ballot process. And that's it. We fixed the 911 problem.
Commissioner Crawford?
I agree. I think that just the fact that we vote to allow something to appear on the ballot doesn't mean that we support yes or no, either way. Like she said, it is our job to decide whether it goes to the people or not. And I'm a big fan of allowing the people to choose as much as possible. So I'm not going to limit their ability to choose. And like I said, just because I might vote to allow it to be on the ballot doesn't mean that I support it one way or the other.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Gordy talk again?
I'm sorry.
Can Gordy talk again?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We like him.
You have to come to
Gordy,
the microphone.
up to the microphone if you're going to,
You have to be
if you're going to
official.
speak.
Somebody will read your quote back to you a year later.
The quote that I attributed to you, I did not get from the ticker. It was not from the Record Eagle, as you implied. It was from, you were on
Right,
video.
it was accurate, that's what I'm
That was an
saying.
accurate-
But I think you might have misunderstood what I was saying. I don't believe that this is necessarily the right thing to do, but I believe that it's okay to vote to
No.
put it on the ballot.
And I understand what you said, and I agree with what you said. I'm just saying, somehow you have to put wording on the ballot, in my opinion, that is perfectly clear, because I guarantee you, if it's just kind of out there, 80%, 90% of the voters are going to think all of that money is going for additional services for our veterans, when in fact, that's not the case. So that's my only point. I guess it should be directed to the prosecuting attorney who's drawing up the language.
And I absolutely agree with you.
Dr. Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, part of that is, I mean, that's the one control we do have is over the ballot language, because I completely agree that it needs to be crystal clear what people are voting on. I do support, being a veteran, I do support that. I don't look at it as a bait and switch, and, you know, I do want to make sure it is clear what people are voting for. We do have a problem in this county. We're not getting the veterans the help they need, and it's purely based on money. The wait times down between when they call and they get an appointment is up to 28 days, and that's not acceptable. Yes, it will fill a budget hole. That's not by design, I guess, if you will. This was my attempt to get more revenue into that department. I don't know what we're going to be allowed as far as a millage, so we may still have general fund, and this may supplement it. What I can guarantee you with this board is if we save, you know, 500, 430,000, 500,000, that's not money we're dumping somewhere else. You know, we're not going to look at it and say, wow, we've got all this, now we can go spend. I think I can speak for everybody here to say it's not going to be a windfall for us. You know, yes, it'll help get us into a more balanced budget, but it's not going to be money that we say, oh, we can go spend this somewhere else. On the 911, I completely agree, because we stood up in December, and I think that may have been the meeting you were talking about, where I said, when we come on board, if you do use that for general fund, we're going to rescind that. We wanted all that to go for equipment. I have no problems with trying to raise money through a tax like that for capital. We have, I mean, as Mr. Menzel can tell you, our capital dollars here are abysmal, and we needed that. I mean, that was something that I was completely sold one way, and the wording was kind of ambiguous. So I hope that we will be able to do a good job of explaining this, and it's not a bait and switch.
All right, with that, is there a motion to approve the resolution in our packet that directs Grand Traverse County to move forward with drafting language for an operational millage for the Veterans Affairs Department to be
Madam
placed
Chair.
on the August 2nd ballot?
I move that we approve the Veteran Services Operational Millage, pending the wording, obviously.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Dr. Johnson, supported by Commissioner Crawford. Roll call, Bonnie.
Crawford,
Yes.
Klaus,
Yes.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Croupa,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Max Bauer.
Yes, motion passes. Next on our agenda, department action items. Fleet Management Services Contract. Who would like to take this? The undersheriff. If you would introduce yourself, please.
Under Sheriff Elge with the Grand Traverse Sheriff's Office, and with me tonight is Jason Weiss. He is the Senior Account Executive for Enterprise Fleet Management. He oversees all municipal and government leases in the state of Michigan. And he has definitely got all the technicals down head to toe, but I'm going to present as best I can after I figure this out. With your super secret password and it didn't work. all on?
No, you have to point it at each one. Pointed it at me.
Kind of like the sidearm night, you gotta point
Like
at
your
each one.
magic
you know?
bun.
Should get a 6-shooter version.
Because I'm not the only one with the tech problem.
So, this has been a topic of conversation for us for several months. In November, our agency went out for bids for vehicles for Plain Fleet, or RFPs for Plain vehicles. And the reason for that is because our fleet is aging, and we do not replace our Plain vehicle fleet as often as we replace our patrol cars. So we went to a meeting with Mr. Bott and identified $75,000 from our gas lines in 2015 and requested permission to use those funds or to move those funds to purchase plain cars. Mr. Bott identified the vehicles, and we actually presented an agenda item to you folks in December to talk about that. However, during the RFP, Mr. Weiss contacted us and inquired if we would be interested in a leasing arrangement, or at least having a conversation with us about leasing. And it's something that we used to do many, many years ago. We used to lease our DB cars from Cherry Capital Olds. And Mr. Bott and I met over the years and just decided to go away from that. But right now, our fleet is aging, and we have a problem. So Captain Fulis and I met with Mr. Weiss first by telephone, and then several times after that. And we have had many, many conversations over many, many hours about this concept. And in the end analysis, we believe that there's a significant cost savings to be recognized over the next 10 years. And we would like to present this to you as a proposal of our fleet management, our complete Plain vehicle fleet management between now and the next 10 years, starting with a 5-year lease. I have presented to you 3 different pieces of communication since December 2nd about this. I have 18 slides here. I would like to discuss this in as much detail as possible to answer questions. Outside of these 18 slides, there's a whole bunch of information out there that we can talk about as well if you have questions. So I'd like to move as fast as possible, but please interrupt me if you have questions. I can answer those questions, and Mr. Weiss can answer those questions. So our problem, we have a very old fleet of vehicles, and funds are not available to replace them. And we do replace vehicles every year. We do that typically, our patrol vehicles, and then we usually find funds somewhere else on occasion, every now and again, to purchase some Plain vehicles. We don't see, so funds are not available to change the fleet, and it doesn't appear that that's going to change in the near future. Our challenge is how do we replace our cars, our Plain vehicles, and our patrol cars are our first priority. It seems sensible that that is the first priority. And how can we maintain a fleet of Plain vehicles when large amounts of cash are not available, and we don't anticipate they'd be available? This is just a demographic of a representation of what our age of vehicles is. We bought 2 cars in 2015 with extra money at the end of the year. Everything else is significantly older than 5 years. This is a breakdown of our fleet, starting with a 2003 Pontiac Grand Am. There should be 21 cars in this list. We are going to eliminate 1 car. That would be the 2003 Pontiac. We're not going to replace that in our fleet as we do not have a need for that vehicle. I'd like to talk about the fleet just a little bit because you'll see specifically with the 2006 Ford Tauruses, you're going to see, well, that's a 2006 Ford Taurus and they have 98,000 and 89,000. Our mechanic from TC Fleet Repair has looked at these vehicles extensively and has determined that they're not safe to drive. The floorboards in those Tauruses, he said if there was no carpet in that vehicle, you'd put your hand through the floorboard. So those vehicles are in essence inoperational to us.
You checked the rear struts yet?
Pardon?
Have you checked where the rear struts mount yet?
We've had some issues with that as well. So we have a need for this fleet. Over the last, well, I'll say since I've been here, we have always had a Plain vehicle fleet. And the Plain vehicle fleet represents our needs. Detectives, special investigative units typically rotate their cars. They're not law enforcement looking cars. They're cars that are supposed to look like your cars. They're supposed to be varied makes and models. They're supposed to be varied years, various conditions, and various looks. Command has SUVs that we use for on-call purposes in response to incidents. We carry a lot of gear. We carry a lot of people. And So that would be the reason for the SUVs. We would like to mirror our fleet and keep the fleet consistent.
Nate, I have a question on this.
Yes.
Not knowing a lot about what you do, but this is like undercover people or people that don't want to drive around in a obvious cop car. And they're not, I mean, some of them are kind of nice cars. I guess I always pictured like the Uncle Buck kind of car for the undercover thing, but some of these are kind of nice. And I'm curious on, obviously, if you have somebody that's following somebody, they switch out cars. That makes sense. They don't want to have some guy notice the same Ford Taurus is, somehow magically outside his house all the time. But do the officers take these home?
Yes.
Do they? So there isn't just a lot of this fleet of cars that are plain. They're assigned to certain officers.
That's correct.
And then periodically they'll swap if they're needing to with other people.
So the concept here is low profile. We want low profile vehicles. We don't want to be immediately recognizable as law enforcement. TNT cars are even more low profile because they're actually doing active surveillances, active buys, active stings. They can't be recognized as cops. They don't look like cops. They have, I don't want to be.
This is a different situation.
Nope, this is it. This is what we're talking about.
Okay.
They're involved in these numbers.
Okay.
So low-profile vehicles are important for a lot of reasons in law enforcement. I will give you an example about what you were just referring to. We did a surveillance in Kingsley, and if you look up there, there's a lot of Ford Escapes.
Yeah.
So we did a surveillance on some burglary suspects on, and I can't remember the month, I'm sorry, and the captain looked, and he saw escape, 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 escape. There's not that many escapes in the entire village of Kingsley, and there's 4 of them on that given morning. So that represents a problem to us. One of the officers had the bad guy walk right up to the window and say, "How are you?" Well, we weren't in a position to arrest him yet. We were surveilling him. So it kind of put a crimp in our plans, you could say.
You guys all have short hair. Oh, suspicious.
Well, not all of us.
They're like, and that's Nate Alger. We know Nate Alger.
I can't grow it any longer than this.
Everybody in Kingsley knows Nate Alger.
Yeah. So the concept, that is correct. The concept is to have a wide variety of vehicles that we can use in any given instance so that we're not immediately recognizable as police officers. I can roll up to a bank on a bank alarm. I'm not threatening. I don't drive a police car. My truck is not immediately identifiable as a cop car. So if I need to make a soft approach to that bank or an alarm, I can be that guy that does it. The uniformed cars stay back. So that's the and this has been over years of experience that we've developed these vehicles and put these vehicles in place because they serve a purpose. So our intention is to mirror this concept. So our plan of action is this. Mr. Weiss came, we spoke a lot, to say the least, about this concept. And ultimately, Mr. Weiss presented us a proposal for fleet management that over the course of 10 years could save $519,000, $40,000 in the first year. So how do we do that? We've identified 17 of those vehicles that you just saw. We'll enter into fleet management contracts with Enterprise Fleet Management into a specific lease agreement for each vehicle. We will also allow Enterprise to sell our current 17 vehicles from our current fleet. So 17 vehicles from that demographic or that table will be sold by Enterprise. We use the proceeds identified in 2015. That $75,000 that we have still, and then the $61,600 or more that we will get from the sale of our vehicles to offset this lease between now and 2018. How the lease works, it's a non-traditional lease. The vehicles.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So you're taking the equity in the existing vehicles for the downstrokes on the leasing of the vehicles. Is that correct? And that's why we're not making payments for a couple of years.
That is.
Now, at the end of that lease, my understanding was there would be some credit for the existing ones. It was around $64,000 or something, which could be then used for additional leasing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All
So
right.
at year 5, and you'll see this in a later slide, in year 5, Enterprise has estimated the residual value of the vehicles leased And they have told us that you are not only going to get the residual value of the leased vehicle back, but you're going to get more than that by sale through Enterprise. The more than that is Grand Traverse County's money to use for that's the equity at the term, I guess. We'll talk about that in a few moments. But yes, that is exactly correct.
Okay.
There are no mileage restrictions on this lease. It's based on 18,000 miles, but there are no mileage restrictions on this lease. The lease amount is based on the cost of the vehicle minus the future market value of the vehicle and the enterprise fee. And the leases are any number of years between 1 and 5. Personally, we would like to use a 5-year lease.
And you're leasing cars of different years? Because you want to have your fleet be of varied years, not 17, 2015
Well,
cars.
makes and models. We are going to keep, I could show you, I'll go back to that.
So you're keeping some of these?
Yes, we are. 17 of these vehicles will be swapped. 2 of the 2010s, 2 2015s, I forgot which other one is. Captain Fuelis has identified one as well for the use of TNT. So some of these vehicles will stay, the rest will be flopped. And there's a reason for that, because every one of these vehicles has a value, a present-day value. Mr. Weiss's analysis back in December took and estimated all the values of sale for these vehicles, and that creates the $61,600 that we can use to offset the lease payments. Every month that we continue to drive these vehicles, the value of these vehicles goes down. So the residual value we just spoke about is the estimated value of the leased vehicle at the end of the lease. A 2016 GMC Terrain is $20,985 delivered to us. That's a delivery price. The residual value at the end of the term is $52,9640. So if you subtract that, it's $264 a month plus the $70.48 lease charge. That's the lease cost for per month for that vehicle. It's a very simple way of doing the lease. Again, there is no maintenance, there's no mileage restriction that you see in a typical lease. How we pay for it, as we just spoke about, there is $75,000 that has been moved to a capital outlays line for 2016. That was done after a meeting with Mr. Menzel and Mr. Bott in December. He grabbed those funds and put them in a line for us to use, and we expect the $61,600 from the sale of the 17 vehicles. So that gives us $136,600 at least to spend between now and 2018 on this lease. After 2018, the lease amount that we know will have to be budgeted. So the savings summary, I think I mentioned briefly, program first year savings is approximately $40,000. A 10-year total savings is approximately $519,000. Where does that come from? Number one, our repair costs for 2016, we have about $20,500 in repair costs for the plain vehicle fleet identified in the 2016 budget. We're going to estimate that we're going to spend about $10,000 of that. Fuel efficiency, Mr. Weiss has provided us a summary of savings of approximately $10,000. We are thinking that is probably accurate because I did a very rudimentary calculation and he's very close to that. He stands by that. We're going to say we'll save $5,000 as a very conservative figure. So if we can save $15,000 on that 91,270 lease, that takes that lease to 76,270 every year for 5 years.
A question in terms of the, usually the warranties are 3 years,
Tom.
36,000.
Tom.
Three years, 36,000. Are you getting extended warranties in this deal for 5 years?
I don't think there are extended warranties except for if we went with a, did you answer that question better than I can, Jason? Yes, you have to come to the
Please.
mic.
No, you have to come to the microphone, please.
Manufacturer warranties apply to all vehicles. We're ordering these vehicles directly from the manufacturer, so any standard manufacturer warranties would apply. There are no additional warranties that are put in by Enterprise or by the manufacturer.
Okay, so your fourth and fifth year under the lease, you're pretty much on your own then in terms of maintenance, right? Usually with 3-year lease,
Correct.
three-year, 36,000?
Correct. It varies by manufacturer. General Motors, I believe, is a 100,000-mile powertrain warranty.
Powertrain,
So
drivetrain,
depending on the
yeah.
different manufacturer and the vehicle type, the warranties vary based on manufacturer. We went through each one of those.
Okay.
Nate, have you had a chance to have our legal department look at, is it one big contract or individual contracts for each vehicle?
There is a master, yes, in fact, we did. Mr. Forsyth was gracious enough to do that for us, and Mr. Weiss and his legal counsel and Mr. Forsyth worked the contract through a master lease agreement, a supplement to the master lease agreement, and then we had individual lease contracts for the 17 vehicles. We had Mr. Forsyth look at the lease agreements, and he actually made changes to them, and Enterprise Legal Counsel was completely okay with that.
And you don't anticipate acquiring anything more to this fleet for at least the 5 years of...
Correct. Now, that being said, you saw we had two 2015 vehicles. In year 2019, we would flip those cars again.
Okay.
And do the same basic process.
So you continue a staggered...
Yes.
Okay.
So let's talk the 67,100 anticipated equity that Mr. Menzel was just referring to. At the end of the term, Enterprise has said these vehicles, worst case scenario, they're going to be worth this much money. And they have a figure of that. And then anything over and above that, if the vehicle sells for more than that, that is money that comes to Grand Traverse County. That extra money, Mr. Weiss is saying that's going to be at least $67,100 more than you're going to owe at the end of 5 years on these vehicles. So that money, in year 2020, you'll see the payment schedule go from $91,270 to about $38,000. That is the reason for that significant savings in year 5. Year 6 will go back up to the $90,000 arena. Then in year 10, that number will drop back down again because of the flip of the vehicles. So that is a significant cost savings recognized through the leasing program. Questions about that?
Not seeing any.
So that is an example of what we're looking at for the next 10 years of leasing if we do a 10-year lease. Year 2020 will be a significant drop, as will 2025.
Tom?
Now, when we looked at that, when Dean and I looked at that, it's pretty tough to build up capital reserves with the financial situation we're in, and obviously there's a need of cars. So we thought the concept had validity. It did get the vehicles that they needed and are wearing out, but we don't have to expend money that we don't have, and that seemed like a logical solution. And then having some equity at the end of it to put towards another extension made sense too. So the concept seems valid, and I've not seen anything, and I've had a couple of subsequent discussions since then, has changed my thoughts on that.
What we see as the benefits to this, it preserves county capital in
There's a
uncertain
lead-in,
times.
I guess, to you, right? I didn't know I was doing it because we haven't practiced this, but that was a lead-in to your benefits.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Step
Front
one. We are able to maintain our fleet of plain vehicles, much more efficiency. We use Enterprise used the purchasing power of the county through the manufacturers. The manufacturers recognize Grand Traverse County, so Enterprise is able to grab that pricing for us through the manufacturers. The independent ability to access all manufacturers across the board, not just Fords or Chevys or GMCs. We have many vehicles available to us. The low cost of repair and maintenance. It stabilizes our budget for the next 10 years. We know what it is. We can work with that. And funding is identified through 2017. We also don't have to sell the cars at the end of the lease. Right now, we take a lot of time administratively to put these cars on a website. Sergeant Raska does the auctions. We don't get the amount of money we should be getting for our flipped vehicles, and Enterprise is going to be a lot better capable of able to do that. So So those are some benefits that we see. The expected results, we're going to have a fixed budget for the entire Plain vehicle fleet. We're going to have increased reliability and performance. We're going to have reductions in cost of repairs and improved fuel efficiency by at least 3 miles per gallon on average, or 4? I think it's more.
The residual value for each individual vehicle is in each contract
Yes.
that we have. So we have a fixed item to budget with as far as return at the end of the lease.
Yes. So we know what Enterprise is saying, based on this vehicle is going to be worth this much, so you're going to owe us for that much, but he's saying you're going to get this much more on top of that.
And that is in the contract individually of
These are his worst-case scenario estimates, that if everything goes wrong, $67,100. Measurements, at the end of the first 5 years, we're going to recognize savings in repairs and maintenance. We will track all fleet repairs. We'll track all gas mileages. We're going to compare those to historical information to make sure that this is of value. And if it's not, we're going to have to make adjustments. Any questions?
Dr. Johnson?
And this may be more, when you go to resell these, is it common knowledge that they were cars in the law enforcement department where you have a lot of idle time? You know, where the mileage doesn't tell the true story of the wear on the engine?
I don't know the disclosures.
I mean, that's probably why, you know, you won't get the same price as he would selling it as.
Right.
If you choose to have Enterprise handle the remarketing of the vehicle, basically what happens is they're going to take those vehicles and they're going to go in with the mix with all of the other rental vehicles that we have. So the answer is ultimately the people that are buying them are bidding on them as is. They don't know where it came from or how it was used.
Okay. Because I like I said, I guess for me, the residual value would be, in my head, would be a lot less if I knew that you had a lot of idle time just sitting with the engine running, not necessarily the mileage would reflect that.
That's true, and that's part of the reason we took a very conservative approach where we left those residual values, because the reality is if you decide not to have Enterprise sell them, which by contract you retain the right to sell them yourself, and if you put them on your own auction, as an example, we wanted to make sure that we didn't expose the county to the vehicles not being worth what the residual value was. That was a real important piece of the analysis.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Nate, the only question, you know, as you and I spoke on the phone the other day, I'm still concerned knowing a little bit about how these cars are used. The fact that we're only going to have 4 or 5 cars that we're going to rotate through so as that we have some old vehicles. You know, and do you believe that that's going to be an adequate number?
I do think that, and we have 2 TNT officers presently, and Captain Fulis knows which of those vehicles he's going to use for the narcotics team and the surveillances. He knows, and they know, that those are going to be the older vehicles in the stock. The other 2 are the 2010 vehicles that Captain Ritter and Lieutenant Lassa drive. Those vehicles are going to age as well, and so we'll be able to use those as well for TNT operations or anything else that's clandestine.
Any additional questions? All right. I will make a motion to approve the Master Equity Lease Agreement and the amendment to the Master Equity Lease Agreement with Enterprise Fleet Management using the funds set aside for this program in 2016. I'm going to take this in pieces, Nate.
Support.
All right, moved by Commissioner Max Bauer, supported by Commissioner Wheelock. Discussion, Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, and I can't remember if I saw it in an email or what, but we don't have any issues with purchasing because of this amount or anything, because we really didn't go for bids or any of that.
Right. And I was asked by the undersheriff to do a review of the purchasing policy to make sure that they are in full compliance. And there is an exemption found in the purchasing policy that basically states when you're using other governmental entities' contracts that have gone through a bid process or similar process, then we can waive the bid process here. So the contract that Mr. Weiss sent me, I believe is based out of Macomb County. Midland County. And we use that kind of as the template or model.
Okay. I just didn't want that to come back to say, hey.
Nate, these cars will be purchased on the state purchasing policy then, so is that the pricing gets down and the taxes are exempt?
Well, the prices come from the manufacturer based on our status as county government.
All right. Any further discussion?
I would say that Chris and I were talking, and he has a 14-year-old car, and I have a 15-year-old car, so if you want to borrow it for some kind of surveillance, we've got an in-house supply right here.
Thomas Uncle Buck.
If you want us driving your car,
All I want you to do is repair it, that would be helpful.
All right.
All of us are running around in 100,000-mile cars, Nate, if you needed an extra.
And keep in mind that
Mine's 200.
the flip of that is the value of our cars goes down significantly the older they get.
All right.
I have
Mr.
one
Kropa.
last question. There is guaranteed no loss. We
Guaranteed
are
no loss?
absolutely guaranteed a profit on each of the 17 vehicles at the end of the lease.
Those numbers that I gave you were forecasted by Mr. Weiss as being worst-case scenario on these vehicles, in both our current vehicles and our lease vehicles. So if you did the math with this 71,000...
That's what I was just doing.
You do that over 5 years, and if you take the average cost of our vehicle and multiply that by 5 years, it's a much cheaper way to go than purchasing a loan.
Dr.
Yeah, and just to
Johnson.
add to that, if you haven't tried to buy a used car lately, prices are up. The last few times I went to do that, I actually found it was a better deal to buy a new one than to buy a used one, so.
So there is a contract for each car that we sign that says, at the end of this lease in 5 years, you are guaranteed a minimum return profit of this.
No, I wanted to address that question. There is no guarantee contractually because, and I can't tell you I can look at your past history to see how many miles you drive and what the conditions of the cars are going to be. So what we did is that we took an estimated resale value based on your usage and then using all of our data to show what they're worth. The reason I can't provide a guarantee is, in theory, you could take these cars tomorrow and start driving back and forth to California and turn them in with 500,000 miles, right? I have no way to control that. So what I did was I based the residual value using the usage patterns of these vehicles that we had, and we took a very conservative approach. I believe from our models that there's going to be a much larger gain than what we presented here. But I want to make sure that we're being as conservative as possible to give you that worst case scenario. But direct answer, there is no guarantee that you will get X amount of dollars above or below the residual. They will resell for what they will resell for at that time.
And we have the option to purchase them as well.
Yes. You have the option to purchase them at any given point. You can purchase them before the end of the term. Every month you're paying in principal to the loan. So there's a decline in book value. At any point, you can write a check for that book value, and they're your cars.
Dr. Johnson.
Are you able, because you do this for several law enforcement agencies, have you been doing it long enough to have a good basis to make that prediction, I guess, if you will,
Yes.
for law enforcement
I have
vehicles?
many that we've gone through multiple cycles
Okay.
on, not only here in the state of Michigan, but also all over the country.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
If I can also add, we didn't take Mr. Weiss's word for it. We went and asked some of his references, questions, and they all spoke very highly of the program. They spoke very highly of Mr. Weiss himself. And I think there was 91 law enforcement agencies across the country, many private entities in the area. If you would like to see those, I have those that use this enterprise leasing program as well.
Anything else? Tom?
There are plenty of models out there for depreciation, and I'm sure it used to be 24, 18, 666 in terms of the first 2 years heavy depreciation. What formula did you use for these? Something like that?
What we did is that we ended up looking at your mileage patterns, and very simply, we depreciated each car at 1.25% per month.
All right.
And that is a very conservative
That's pretty
amount.
standard.
They're really depreciating less than 1.25% based on the fact that you're getting such a large incentive from the manufacturer because you're a government entity.
Right.
Your delivered price is significantly lower than what the general public would buy those cars at. We're depreciating them all at 1.25%, which is plenty. Where you're really going to make, to answer your question even a little bit more, there was we anticipated that most of these vehicles were going to drive 18,000 miles a year is what we use looking at past history. The reality is the vast majority of that fleet drives less than that. So obviously, the less miles that are on the vehicle, if you choose to have it resold, it's going to sell for more because the mileage is lower.
All right. Anything else? We have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. All right. I will...
Do we need a roll call vote on that one for money, or?
No.
I don't think so. Chris, do we need a roll call vote?
No.
I know the last meeting, we went round and round about roll call.
Nate, that was a very good job.
Thank you very much
In
for that.
investigating that whole, how we can save money on that. That was
She just wants to
excellent.
ride in the car.
I don't.
It's been a very, and I'll tell you, this was a change in philosophy for us because Captain Fulis and I have thought about leasing the vehicles through a local vendor. And when we looked at those, it was very costly. And we realized that it was not cost effective until Mr. Weiss was able to present this. It took us a while to get over that hump to say, this is a new concept for us, let's think about this. So
All right.
I very much appreciate your support.
I'm not done yet.
Well, you're not.
No.
All right.
I'm not buying a 2003
I,
Pontiac Grand Am from you.
I will move to approve the Grand Traverse County Sheriff's Department to declare the 17 plain vehicles identified for sale through Enterprise Fleet Management as surplus, so they may be sold as the vehicles are scheduled for replacement. Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Maxbauer, supported by Commissioner Wheelock. I'll get it out. Discussion. Commissioner Wheelock.
I'm assuming those cars will not be sold until the new cars arrive, correct?
That is correct.
And they're probably not all coming in on one transport, so it's going to cycle through as we go.
That's correct. And we did not say, these are distributed through local dealers. I think that's important to get out as well. These vehicles come from the manufacturer directly to local dealers, and the local dealers get an incentive for packaging that vehicle, if you will, for us.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. All right. Is there a specific reason, Nate, that you want us to move to ask Mr. Menzel, yourself, and Captain Fulis to be the signatories for the lease?
If I'm not mistaken, excuse me, we need to have Mr. Menzel as the chief to sign those agreements, and then the sheriff's department has to have people who can sign and make changes as need be. So I'm asking that myself and Captain Fulis from the sheriff's office be the signatories on the documents needed.
I'll make it official. I would move that Mr. Menzel be the authorized official of the lease agreements, and that Under Sheriff Alger and Captain Fulis be the signatories for the lease quotes. Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Maxbauer, supported by Commissioner Klaus. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nate.
Nice
Thank you, Nate.
presentation, Nate. Good job.
All right, next, administration. Mr. Menzel, you're up.
Well, John, you're up. This was a delegated project, and John chaired that to take a look at these things, so, and he's going to present that to you, mainly because it's simply a restructuring, basically, and I didn't want it to be connected too closely to me. It's just the administrator itself and the position that we're looking at here. So John did a majority of the work and deserves credit for that.
Good evening again, John Syke, Planning and Development Director. What you're being presented with this evening are a few things that are going to hopefully lead to better operations, not just for the board in terms of its meeting, but also as well as the overall county operations. And what I wanted to start with, there's really three of these things here, but we'll start with the update of the purchasing policy limits. This is an amendment to your current purchasing policy, but it is not a change in any other parts of the purchasing policy other than looking at the limits in terms of where certain approvals are required depending on what level that purchase amount is at. So there will be at some point a review of the purchasing policy, but not at this time. The purchasing policy limits right now, as you're familiar, anything above $10,000 requires a competitive bid or sealed bid process. It does require board approval. The amounts from basically 2,000 up to 10,000, do allow for administrator approval, and then departments can approve up to 2,000. We're looking at, these are limits that have been in place for a considerable length of time, and what we're looking at is updating them to better suit county operations, reduce the number of minor purchases that are coming to you to allow for better streamlining of your meetings. It centralizes the purchases more towards a more consolidated view in terms of having the administrator oversight on these particular purchases. And also, I think this is a really important point, is that under your current process, public sector procurements that require bids and detailed descriptions of items that are going out for bid and so forth can be quite cumbersome to the respondents that may respond to those bids. And in many cases, you will get people that will not respond to them because of the complication that often we require in terms of the bidding process. So this will allow for some of that being eased up in terms of, and hopefully will leverage the county's purchasing power in a way that will make for more better purchases for the county. What's being proposed is currently a department head approval is needed for up to $500. It would go up to $999. From $1,000 up to $49.99 is department head approval, but it's required 3 verbal votes or quotes. That up to $1,000 does not necessarily require a verbal quote. From $5,000 to $29,999 would be the 3 written quotes, department head approval, administrator approval, and purchase order requirement. The $5,000 was a good point in terms of it matches the county's fixed asset policy, so it seemed like that would be an appropriate point at which it would require administrator approval. And then for purchases at $30,000 and greater would be a competitive bid, sealed bid process, department head approval, administrator approval, purchase order, and then board approval in terms of how it's done currently. So that's essentially what's being presented to you, is those new purchasing limits in terms of the purchasing policy.
Commissioner Crawford.
I have a question. Am I correct in that these limits and the things that we're setting here are for items that are already in the budget? And it's, am I assuming that we still would have to approve items that have not been budgeted for, that somebody is asking for outside of the budget? Is that correct?
Right.
No matter how much it is?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure of that we're not giving, the ability of our administrator or department heads to go ahead and say, although that's not in the budget and it's $27,000, we're going to go ahead and do it. We still have the ability to hear that. Is that correct?
Well,
I'm assuming all this is for budgeted things.
Now I'm not sure I do.
I wasn't clear on that.
I think it would, my thinking, as we discussed this, was it would be up to that $30,000 threshold that the administrative position would have the authority to make those decisions. I can't think of too many cases would be outside the budget parameters, because you'd be going over the budget.
We've had several things come to us in the past year that were in addition to the budget, that required a budget adjustment for, and I'm just wanting to make sure that those things still come to us.
Well, if there's a budget adjustment, it will always come before
Okay.
the board. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Dr. Johnson?
Yeah, and it's probably irrelevant of increasing it, but what checks and balances do we have for the smaller purchases that they're good purchases? I know you've spent a lot of time looking, and I know we have to give department heads the latitude and let them take ownership of it, but what do we have, I guess, for checks and balances in there?
Not a lot.
I'm sorry?
I said not a lot. In my opinion, when Dr. Johnson is referring to checks and balances, I'm pretty sure you're kind of referring like to policies and procedures. And we don't have a lot, well, we have policies, but they're not always followed. Right now, where the control is in the claims committee. And I will tell you that the three of us sit and we go through those claims. We look at every single purchase, every single one. It takes a good portion of time. But right now, that really is the only control. As Mr. Menzel has mentioned previously, he has asked myself, Jen DeHaan, who I will introduce before the meeting is over, and Cherry Wolf to sit and take a look at our policies, our procedures, and bring something for the board's consideration in the future, in the near future.
I mean, I don't want to micromanage by any means, but
I'm going to interrupt you for just a minute.
he is.
We have guests in the back that I know our public cannot see, but I would like to say welcome to the children of Heroes in Action of Central United Methodist Church who are listening to us from outside in the hallway. They are getting a civics lessons on county government tonight from our county prosecutor, Mr. Bob Cooney. And I would like to thank you all, their teachers, parents, Pastor Chris Lane, for all you do and for helping to promote good citizenship. You should count yourselves among the heroes in action in our community. And they look like they're
Are you still awake out there?
young grade schoolers. Oh, they're nodding.
There's a few nods.
Well,
nodding out.
welcome,
All right.
welcome to a county board meeting. And thank you for coming. And I'm sorry, Dr. Johnson, that I interrupted you, but
I got to remember where I'm at now. When you see kids' smiling faces, it takes everything.
Let's go back to budget adjustments.
yes.
Yeah, like I said, the purpose of that question was not to say we want to micromanage. We still want to have them to be able to purchase small items when they need to, but I just think that we need to make sure it's not getting abused. But
Well, I would say that the budget process is, in the power of the purse, is the most important power that you have. Also, there should be an element of trust to who you hire in these positions, and through the budget process, you certainly would see if the individual isn't able to stay within the parameters of the budget. But it should, the intent is to, and all of these things is to lessen the volume of things that comes to you and lessens the time frames for people having to wait for the next meeting and that kind of thing. And part of the genesis of what we've talked about is we'd like to see the board get to be the strategic planners, the forward thinkers, because right now it's a very reactive situation you're in. And it would be important, I think, for the health of the area long-term is to have a board that does strategic thinking forward and not reacting to minor day-to-day things. And also the control vehicle is the policies that are put in place in terms of the parameters of what you can and can't do. And we'll be coming to you down the road. This is a long process of revisiting policies and making sure they're in alignment and they're in alignment with the strategies. So this is just the first step of that. But it all comes down, quite frankly, to trusting the person that you hired to do the job,
Commissioner Crawford.
I do think that we should get more into governing by policy and set up the policy and say, this is the way we want it done. These are the things we don't want you to do. These are the things, this is how we want it done. And govern that way rather than just take it piecemeal. Well, that's okay, that's not okay. There should be a policy that spells it out very clearly. And if the policy is not followed, then there's repercussions for that, for those that don't follow the policy. So if we come up with good policies, then all we need to do is make sure the policy is followed and is revised as needed. But
Do we have appropriate claims policies right now, the three of you that are on there? Do you think that there's room for improvement or?
Absolutely. There's
Okay.
room for
Yes.
improvement and there's room for clarification. If it is
there's both.
absolutely clear what you can buy, for what purpose, and the process you have to go through to get it, there should be no problem. And then the measurement is, did you follow the policy?
Mm-hmm.
Yes or no?
Yes or
And the
no?
role
If
of
you
the-
didn't follow the policy, there's an issue with that.
Now, the role of the administration is to make sure that the policies are being implemented correctly and honestly and accurately and would hold people accountable if they're not. And if they're not being done, and if they're not corrected, then the administrator should be held accountable for that, because that's his or her role in the process.
But it should be our job to write those policies, to make sure
Right.
those policies are very clear and communicated to the employees, that they understand and that they're followed.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Yeah, I think we have to stress here that that policy is where we are responsible for, the legislative portion of this. Whether it be $500 or $5,000, the policy has to be in place. And the fact that the Claims Committee reviews all the purchases, guess what, folks? By the time the Claims Committee sees them, it's too late. That purchase has been made.
Amen.
That's what I'm wondering. It's a bill, it's been promised already.
You know, so I think that's the biggest piece that I can stress about this purchasing policy, is that we need to make sure that the policy is properly
That's
drafted
absolutely
and
It will be.
And, you know, and I don't think we're there. You know,
We're not.
over the past time, I have spent my share of time working on the Claims Committee and going through invoice by invoice by invoice, and that was when they weren't on a computer printout, you know, and we're going through them one after the other, you know. But the fact is that, you know, by the time the Claims Committee gets the opportunity to review that, and, you know, we've had multiple discussions over the years about $500 picture frames and, you know, $2,000 chairs and those kind of things. But the fact is, by the time Claims Committee sees it, it's too damn late.
They're sitting in the chair.
We need to make sure that our policies are in place. And again, you know, that comes down to the fact that this board's responsibility is legislative, not administrative.
Do we have to make a motion for you?
Yes, please. Would someone make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to authorize the change in purchase requirements to set the new guidelines, if you will, for the county purchasing policy.
Support.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Do you need any motion for direction to work on policy, or is that already started and
It's already started.
we're good?
Yep, we started it. We had our first meeting.
Well, thank you.
Moving ahead. Where's your project manager?
Yes,
There.
yes.
Thank you.
Project
She's all
manager
over
is
it.
here. All right, staffing plan amendments.
This item entails a resolution. This stemmed from conversation previously by the board regarding staffing plans and questioning why staffing plans were being submitted to the board. This clarifies that there would be authorization by the board for the county administrator to assume responsibility for reviewing and approving all staffing plan amendments.
All right. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I recommend we approve that all staffing plan amendments will be the responsibility, including approval of the administrator.
Is there support? Moved by Dr. Johnson, supported by Commissioner Kropa. Commissioner Crawford?
I wonder if there's any way to amend it, or I have a question. Does that include a staffing plan amendment that would eliminate an elected official? Or does
That would be
eliminating
a-
an elected official still need to come to us?
Yeah, I don't think he has that power.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's not a,
that's a
that's
I just
nothing
want to
that
make
you
sure
can
if
vote
that's
on.
a, if
Or, I
that's, no,
mean, he
but I
can
just
do-
want to make
no.
sure that that's not part of a staffing plan change. That would be something completely
No,
different.
the law's pretty specific on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Absolutely.
an administrator on down, and you have the administrator, fire and fire authority. It's below that.
Gotcha.
Dr.
Just wanted to know
Johnson.
where the line was
Yeah.
laid.
That's the
Your
line.
seat's safe for a while.
Thank you.
Dr. Johnson?
No,
can't just
and I
automatically say
assume
we're
it'll
going to
be
five.
updated so as to why you're doing it in that way, so that
Well,
when the public comes to us, we could say, look, here's the reasoning behind this, and I know you'll do a good
Well,
job.
I think the process that you go through in the budget hearings, you talk staffing levels and those kinds of things, that's where, and that's really kind of policy setting
Right.
at that time.
So we're not eliminating the county clerk, is what you're saying? That motion is not.
Good
I was
plan,
just-
good plan.
Just for example, if Tom said, you know, we're going to take the county commission from 7 to 5, that's my staffing plan amendment. And
Actually,
No,
that's
you know,
an apportionment, and the
Apportionment
county
committee
clerk
does
gets
that
to
every
say
10
The
that.
court
Okay.
gets to decide
I
With
just
that.
want to
another-
make sure I know
with
whose
the
decisions-
prosecutor and-
whose decisions
Yeah.
those things are.
The
All
apportionment
right.
committee
Would
does
not
that
be one of
by
my,
state.
would not be one of my smarter moves for longevity.
All right, at some
purposes.
point, I've lost control of this meeting. We have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Wheelock.
I guess the only thing that I would have to say is there's a little history to why this was changed. In 2000, probably 2007, 2008, when the county was in significant financial issues before, and we had long-term hiring freezes. We put in place this, that, you know, any position, whether when someone left, there was an automatically hire freeze that they couldn't even post the position for 90 days. Well, you know, when the sheriff lost a deputy or something, he may not want to wait 90 days before he can post that position and then wait for an interview time and a background check. So we made it a provision that those people could come to the county board and ask for an exemption, if you will, from the hiring freeze. That's why all staffing positions were changed to have to come to the county board, because there was just too many times that, you know, people were leaving or whatever the situation were, and there was no provision by which to fill that position for the 90 days because the hiring freeze was in, and it was 90 days before they could post the positions. And, you know, so it was, you know, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months before they could even possibly fill those positions, and sometimes we couldn't wait that long.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next on the agenda, update of grant policy.
Mrs. Sonny is the one who brought it up.
Yeah, this is really a clarification on the current policy. There were some changes, but really kind of, it's essentially the same policy, just where it was kind of clarified is that whether a grant application comes in front of the board or not, and whether when there's grant acceptance, a grant agreement comes in front of the board or not. If, in the case of if it's a grant application where there's no financial match required, or if the financial match was already budgeted for that particular department or program, then it does not require to come to the board. If there is a financial commitment that's required and that has not been budgeted by the board, then that will have to come here. We added in the other clarification that if a grant application creates a new employee position. And the reason we did that is because many times grants are time limited, and we recognize that you could create a position out of a grant, and then you could make the case that you will use other general fund dollars to maintain that position, and then bump up your budget in your department in other ways to compensate for that transfer of dollars. So we recognize that it's important because that's often challenging for the county in terms of there are positions created that when the grant goes away, the position doesn't necessarily go away, and so there needs to be some review done by the board. In terms of the grant acceptance, if there is a same situation where there's a grant agreement where there's no county financial match or the financial match has already been budgeted, then it's really an acceptance with notification to the administrator and the finance director, and then a signature if required by the board chair. This is a situation where it's really the responsibility of the administrator. It's important also too that to keep the finance director and administrator both in the loop on things. Now, if there is a financial commitment where it has not been budgeted, it still does need to come back to the county board. And the same thing with if there's a position created.
Is there a motion? Commissioner Kropa?
I make the motion to approve the updated grant policy to assign grants requiring no financial commitment or that have been budgeted for to the administrator, and grants that require an unbudgeted financial commitment to go to the board for approval. Furthermore, that all grants will continue to require the signature of our board chairman.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Kropa, supported by Commissioner Crawford. Discussion. Hearing none. Mr. Menzel.
This was based on Commissioner Wheelock's comments last time. He got us thinking about that in terms of taking a look at this and bring it up to reality.
Well, historically, we've taken a lot of grant money over the years, and we've created positions. You know, I told Elisa the COPS grants were a perfect example. You know, they were a 3-year grant to pay for community police officers, and we still have, what, 21 community police officers or something like that, but now they're being paid for either by the townships or out of the general fund. You know, originally they were supposed to be, we got federal grant money to pay for those positions, created those positions, and, you know, we have not just the cops, you know, we have a number of them in the courts, you know, and those are legacy costs that the county has absorbed over the years. Not only the day-to-day operations, but that legacy post-employment benefits that those people are also going to derive.
All right. We have a motion and support. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Mr. Syke, the Historic Courthouse Bell Report and Recommendation. That would be you.
Yes, that would be me. As you recall, you received a petition regarding the ring times of the bell at the historic courthouse. There was the petition itself. There was also several emails that we received in support of maintaining those ring times for the bell. Currently, it begins at 6 a.m. and then goes till midnight. So in looking at those, if you were to just look at the responses that we received, we did not go out and ask for any additional comments. It basically, there was 18 people in favor of maintaining the current ring times, and there was about, 14 that wanted to see a change. We did, in terms of that petition, if there was a household that was greater than a half mile, we did not include that. So there was actually interest in also restoring it back to the original 24 hours a day. Didn't want to pursue a process of trying to survey everybody around the area. I don't think that would have been very productive. So what we did is take a look at how it conforms to the city's noise control ordinance. The ordinance does distinguish between different times of the day and also whether it's a commercial area or is it a residential area. Commercial area is an area based on the ordinance. It says that it's an area that's used as office, governmental, retail, or other commercial type offices or uses. So this campus here is what I interpreted it to be a commercial area. We were fortunate to have Officer Scott Maxson from the city police department who does the testing for noise control violations. Along with facilities help, we actually did a testing on January 16th around the area. And what we found is that there was actually 5 locations. The first location was essentially at the foot of the courthouse, where it did read at 70 decibels at a distance of about 75 feet from the bell or so. And that at that amount, it does for that time period actually, yeah, that's the point where it does actually exceed that amount. But when we did the residential areas, we did basically down Washington Street towards where the new Washington Place building is going. We did Midtown. We did over in Wellington at State and Webster at Wellington. In many cases, in direct sight to the bell itself. In those cases, those were all under residential amounts. It's important to note, too, that this was done at about 6:45 in the morning. It was calm. Leaves were off the trees, so if anything, the sound was going to go pretty far. So really looking at that, also recognizing that the bell did ring for 108 years on a 24-hour schedule. It ceased in 2008 and is now actually restored to a limited time that it used to ring. And so based on those comments, the split, or those considerations, the comments that were essentially pretty much split, I'm recommending that the county take no action to adjust the ring times for the bell.
Commissioner Crawford.
I have a question first.
Sure.
Can we make a motion for something different than the recommendation?
Yes, you
Okay.
certainly can.
Then I will be brave.
All righty.
Based on the fact that it was completed in 1900 and the bell rang for 108 years on the 24-hour schedule, I would make a motion that we do change the ringing of the bell and have it go back to the historically accurate 24 hours a day.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner Wheelock. Further discussion? Dr. Johnson?
I don't know, I can't support that. You
Tell us
know,
why.
we used to not take regular baths too, you know, so, I don't know, I don't support that. I think we should just leave it like it is right now and let them hear their bell ringing during a certain time frame, so.
We're talking about the same decibel level, is
Yeah.
that was your recommendation, that the volume didn't need to change, right? We're not in violation of the city sound ordinance at all.
Right, the city does exempt church bells, and I would say this is pretty similar to a church, it's a municipal bell, but it, basically, most communities will exempt church bells from the standpoint of it's just out of custom. It's been a part of the community. There was support, like I mentioned, of people would like to see it return back to 24 hours. It's from my understanding, it was when it was restored with the new ringing system that it was placed at from 6 a.m. to 12 midnight based on the facilities management director, Danny, said that it was kind of just not necessarily based on anything other than thought that would make sense at least to get it back started, so.
And the sound level is comparable to what it was prior to,
I don't know what the sound level would have been prior when it was naturally ringing as a bell. This is an electronic system. I do know that originally when, you have to remember, there was a group of community members that worked to restore the ringing of the bell.
I'm on that committee.
The first time with they got the unit that actually rings the bell, it was not loud enough, so they had to replace that unit. And so, and this is the level that it's at, so.
Commissioner Wheelock?
Well, you know, I think of the emails that I received, more people wanted the bell turned back on than wanted it turned off or reduced. You know, as I read the city's noise control ordinance, even in residential multifamily areas, it's calling for a decibel rating of 60 from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And these testings on Midtown Drive is at 56, on Washington Street at Legion Park is 48, 48 at Wellington and State, 52 at Webster Street in Wellington. All of those are well below the 60 that's allowed in a residential neighborhood. You know, I will admit, to the best of my knowledge, I had no thought that when the bell was restored that it wasn't ringing 24 hours a day. You know, I thought when we made the commitment to restore the bell that it was in turn ringing. And I think, you know, and I'm sure that it was just an arbitrary number that Danny Brown facilitated to say, okay, we're going to ring it from 7 o'clock in the morning till 12 o'clock the following morning. You know, I don't know how that decision even was arrived at. I think it was just an arbitrary number that was picked out.
It was, and he said so.
And I had that conversation too. So, but, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. But I know that of the emails that I received, I'm thinking there were probably close to 2 to 1 people wanting it restored to 24 hours a day. So I'm supporting this motion.
Commissioner Crawford?
I just think it's part of the character of our community, and that it should be preserved.
All right, with Commissioner Gropa.
Captain Ritter, since you're at the jail underneath the clock tower 24 hours a day, is there anything we should know from your point of view as?
I like hearing it.
Okay.
He likes it.
I think it's actually quieter now than what the original bells.
Todd, if you're going to go on too much longer, I'm going to bring you up to the microphone. Mr. Menzel.
I had received a lot of emails as well, and most, as Commissioner Wheelock said, were keeping it as it is. And of course, I'm old Traverse City, and at 6 o'clock, before phones and stuff like that, when the bell rang, that told all the kids they had to stop playing and go home for supper, and you had to be there within just a few minutes. And so, I don't think it had any level. Those things just really rang, so you hear it through the whole town. And I think it was a nice part of a small town. We all knew at 6 o'clock supper was there.
Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, I also think this should just be an administrator function anyway.
However,
You just don't want it off on John to do.
All right, however, we have a motion and support on the floor. I would ask Bonnie for a roll call, please.
Klaus?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes.
Coropa?
Yes.
Johnson?
No.
Crawford?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Debbie
Yay.
Downer.
I know.
John, thank you for your
Thank
time.
you,
Because I'm
John.
sure this took some time and effort to go through, and I appreciate your help and the help from the city to test the decibel ratings.
Now, in my never-ending quest to accommodate our staff, I had John up there all at one time and just skipped right over claims.
That's okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the claims adjustments as presented.
Support?
Moved by Commissioner Coropa, supported by Commissioner Crawford. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Coropa?
Yep.
Johnson?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Klaus?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes. And see now, Mr. Syke gets to go home now. See?
For the
Very
public's
fast,
benefit-
wasn't he?
He just
For the
moved on.
public's benefit, we should note that we just approved claims in amount of $8,886,450.02.
Yes.
She couldn't read it.
All right.
Read this.
Next, old unfinished business, our
Oh, we already did
appointments.
that. Oh, yes.
Oh,
We neglected to approve the appointments that we already said we wanted, so I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution in front of you regarding county appointments.
So moved.
support.
Moved by Commissioner Crawford, supported by Commissioner Coropa. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. There, we did our housekeeping. All right. We have, next on the agenda, a request to proclaim April as Social Host Awareness Month. If no one has any objection, I will have that brought in front of the board next month.
I just always question these things. I know, I'm negative now, but
Negative Bob.
like-
You naysayer, you.
why don't we just have that for the administrator too, you know?
All right, and this is our, and I will not forget you, Jen, just so you know. This is our second opportunity for public comment. Would anyone like to make public comment?
He's incognito.
Captain Clark, speaking of grants, we just received a $10,000 grant from the Lesson Ann Biederman Foundation for a new canine. That money had originally been identified in the Capital Improvement Fund, but we wrote the grant and we received that. So we'll be retiring Canine Hess in February and getting a new canine after the 5-week training period.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Sheriff Bensley.
Good evening, Tom Bensley, Grand Traverse County Sheriff. I think it's appropriate that we address some of the comments that were made earlier at the first public comment dealing with the special programming that we have in the jail. We have numerous programs that take place in the jail. Captain Ritter can enumerate and speak more in detail towards those. However, what we have done is a major change in the way we operate in the jail. For many years, there has been discussions with the administrative staff and the corrections officers and corrections sergeants about going to a 12-hour shift schedule. For decades and decades, it's been a 3-shift, 8-hour per shift schedule in the jail. We are trying this. It started January 11th, and we are trying, we have a temporary agreement for 1 year with the corrections officers and sergeants to try this. We're doing it for 2 reasons. Number one, it's a change in the way we do business. A lot of other jails operate in this fashion. Number 2, it puts more staffing in the jail. We have more people working on the day shift, 6A to 6P, than the midnight shift. We have a huge overtime issue in the jail. A lot of that is covered or occurs because of transports downstate. Now we have 12 hours to get downstate and get back, make a few stops, and that's better than 8 hours. So what we have done is we have put all these programs on hold until we can get into the way this new 12-hour shift works. There's going to be some tweaks. Probably more importantly is that to come in line with the budget requests for 2016, we have not filled 3 vacancies that we have in the jail. We are short 3 corrections officers. We're not staffing those positions. We're hoping that this 12-hour shift configuration will work. That will be a large savings. So that is another reason. So the programs right now, for the most part, are on hold. Once we get into this 12-hour shift schedule, make our tweaks, get it running, hopefully very smoothly, we can start bringing them back in. And if you want a little more detail on the programs, how many there were, what they addressed, Captain Ritter surely can address those for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. You're welcome to speak if you'd like to, Captain.
Yeah, just real quick, Captain Todd Ritter of the Grand Traverse County Jail. So we do have, first of all, the gentleman that spoke earlier, the head of his program was notified. It was unfortunate it didn't trickle down to him before he came in, and he did get an apology for that. The programs, we have streamlined them. That type of 12-step program is available still. We no longer offer 5 variations of it. Every program we run requires us to move inmates, and that requires officer time. So right now, we're streamlining those programs to more effectively use our officers than moving inmates for additional programs of the same repetitive type. So,
I appreciate the explanation. Thank you, Captain.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
am I allowed to address the public commenter for just one question?
Oh, sure.
Just a clarification on the comment on the GED program, that was a little concerning.
but actually, the GED program kind of removed itself. Our GED instructor ended up taking a leave of absence and then didn't come back, and we just haven't refilled it, so.
Okay, so there's still...
Right, that is a funded program, there's still funds for that.
there's a commitment to it.
Yeah, if we
Okay, it's
identify
very
another GED
important.
instructor.
That's a
correct.
program that's been in and out of the jail
It's
a
a very
dozen
difficult
times
to
since
find
I've
a
sat on
GED
this board
instructor
over
to
the
do
years.
that.
Okay.
It's here for a couple of years and it's gone for a couple of years.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Before we get to commissioner reports, I would like to introduce everyone to Jen DeHaan. Jen is our new deputy administrator. I believe her motto is, "I fish, therefore I am." Jen, would you, we are televised, if you would speak a little bit and just tell the public a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and thank you for the warm welcome, and thank you to the citizens and the staff here in the county that have welcomed me. It's been a very comforting transition here for my first few days. I've spent a little over 10 years working in local government as both a public servant and as an educator, teaching local government and public sector budgeting, and also as an independent consultant working with local units of government on special projects and initiatives that they want to address. So moving forward, I'm looking forward to working with the board, to working with Tom on those special projects that like you talked about earlier today, and to continuing to move Grand Traverse County forward. And for me to be a member of this community, I'm really excited. So thank you.
Well, welcome.
We call those personal growth initiatives.
Personal growth opportunities,
That's
yes. All right, commissioner reports. Commissioner Wheelock.
Just first, as your chairman of your Public Health and Safety Committee, I received a letter from the Department of Health and Human Services, and Wendy Trude also received one, just verifying that they are going to confer accreditation status to our local health department. And they're especially pleased to acknowledge the repeated success, as this is our 6th cycle of accreditation. I'm sure the certificate and plaques will be coming, but I did receive the letter last week, so.
All right. Commissioner Kropa, then Commissioner Crawford.
Spending the day in Lansing on Monday with public safety and judiciary, I had to make notes, and I'm sorry, I could have put it on an agenda, but it's some important stuff I wanted to share, which is why I'm assuming you send me down there for the day every month. The Crimes Victim Rights Act rewrite is going on, and the MAC initiatives with this legislation, all of it comes to us because eventually this will translate to dollars mandated to county governments. So that's basically where we're at. But they're talking about changing the way that restitution is paid, and 100% of it going towards the victims, and that then lacks behind in what the counties receive to compensate them for services. And the Attorney General's office sent a representative to our committee to initiate sort of a discussion on that, and as you can imagine, the counties weren't real excited. We have a judge sitting on our panel, and she didn't like the idea of the court's budgets going towards it. But one thing that was real interesting was the discussion on how counties shoulder the cost of collections in this. And what do we do? You know, where do we go? And what I learned from most of the counties on my board is that we are kind of unique in having an in-county collections agent for our court. And that's something that a lot of counties are striving for. Interesting note, no big revenue sharing increase. They're going to try to hold steady. The Detroit Public School disaster and Flint will be receiving the majority of the excess in the state budget this year. MAC is fighting for a full repeal of Senate Bill 571. I don't think there's a person that enjoys Senate Bill 571. The prosecutor of Ottawa County was there, and he has informed his Board of Commissioners, basically it's a gag order, do not speak about millages or talk about millages. So I was thinking in his spare time, our civil counsel, Mr. Forsythe, I would really appreciate a memo from the county prosecutor's office to staff and elected officials in your interpretation of Senate Bill 571, especially with the fact that we have millages coming up in many ways. The main discussion and why they want a full repeal is the language in it of public resources. According to the Ottawa County prosecutor, county commissioners are public resources. We're paid by tax dollars. We hold no office hours. Therefore, we're 24/7 public resources, which the people that contact us at the grocery store when we are grocery shopping. No, we're available 24/7 to discuss issues. So it would be nice to have some clarification from our prosecutor on what they want us to do or not do in regard to discussions on millages. The raise the age package that I brought a resolution before this board. We unanimously opposed the raising of the age for juvenile crime. The hearing was in December. I unfortunately couldn't make it down, but we were well represented by our Judiciary Committee, and they're expected to vote on it in February, and currently the counties are not happy with the current language that's in it. And apparently there's been some breakthrough and some meeting of the minds in the last week. Raising the age is going to significantly impact the budget of Grand Traverse County. But even worse, it's going to return kids to the street that need help and services and programs that we can't fund. So we lose both ways. We lose intellectually and we lose fiscally. It's a lose-lose. Senator John Prose, I think he's Barry County. He is currently creating an entire new package of prison reform bills to address things all the way from raise the age to presumptive parole, which the update is, it looks like presumptive parole, which we unanimously opposed, is going to die in the Senate. So that was a good thing. Many of you may have read about the current U.S. Supreme Court reversal on life sentences to juveniles, people that are 17. I believe there's 351 of them in the state that are now going to be eligible for parole. To the best of my knowledge, we do not have any juveniles that were sentenced to life that came out of Grand Traverse County, but they can return them to their home county on parole. And we are then informed for it. It's an interesting bill, and I was told it didn't really affect Grand Traverse County.
All prisoners are returned to their own county.
Right. But they weren't eligible for parole, and now they're saying if you were 17 at the time of sentencing to life, which is going to be first degree, I think, you now are eligible to be heard for parole. And that's returning 351 people to the parole boards in Michigan that never would have had that opportunity. And that is part of the little feelers of this Prison Reform Bill Act. So we're looking at what Senator Prose is doing, and it'll be interesting to see if it's things with better language. But unfortunately, damn near every bill there returned unfunded mandates to the counties in the tune of millions of dollars a year. Yeah.
I have a question. Isn't Commissioner Lathrop on a statewide board for corrections
It's on the State Community Corrections Board.
Yeah.
Does that link into some of the concerns you have, and could?
You would have to speak probably with
Yeah,
Dr. Lathrop, he sits
I-
on that.
We're on, basically, we nag legislators. That's what
Okay.
we do. And so that's sort of, we represent the county's needs,
Okay.
but predominantly unfunded mandates. And for whatever reason, with the state initiative to close these prisons, you're all of a sudden watching these costs get shifted to the county. And we're already going to get costs shifted because of the Detroit Public Schools in Flint.
My thinking was if he was at another level and may have another bully pulpit to
It's a
push
great
from,
thought. I'll talk to Dan about it.
And make sure, because he might be able to help you on another level.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. On a side note on public safety, I was one of the hundreds, if not thousands, of people sitting at home Saturday night listening on a police scanner app to our sheriff's department, along with other agencies, in a standoff with the gentleman that they believe was an attempted robbery. It occurred to me as I sat there listening to the ERT that no one should know where our guys are at and what door they're going in and what window they're through. And the man that was in there could have been listening to the app or could have had a friend texting him, hey, they're coming around, the kitchen now. And it kind of bothered me. I also looked, and we were number 4 in the entire nation on listening to police scanners that night, right behind, we made another list, Nate, behind Chicago, Flint, and Indianapolis, was Traverse City, Michigan, and listening to this. First of all, I want to thank our sheriff's department and all of the partners in that for a safe outcome for our community, because it might not have been. But I was concerned enough to ask the lieutenant, and he informed me that our new 800 radios are able to be encrypted and they will not be heard by the general public and thousands of people where our ERT is located in a standoff situation. And that's another thing. I just wanted to thank this board for supporting my initiative with the 800 system, since Gordy so graciously brought up my opposition to the 911 surcharge. Last night, the Garfield Township Board of Trustees chose to not change or hear an amendment to the Silver Lake zoning. So it's going to be affecting all of it. But the Planning Commission recommended no action on the current zoning for weekly rentals. So as stands, Garfield Township, and I believe most of our townships, do not allow weekly rentals in residential areas on the lake. Brownfield this morning met. The East Bay Plaza is moving forward. What an interesting project. There's a plume of dry cleaning fluids under there. Tom was there. And what I wanted to let the board know is that they listened to our concerns at the Board of Commissioners level. They are bringing in outside people for claims. Jean is now charging for her consulting. We are not just a free consultation service for developers. And I thought it was some really great things that they did. Saturday is the Guns N' Hoses charity hockey game, 6 p.m., I believe, at Center Ice. There's also an open house for the Uptown Project, York County Brownfield dollars, right downtown by the Sharp Bend by the post office. From 12 to 4, they'll have an open house there at Uptown. There's also an open house for 2 affordable housing projects.
That's February 6th, though.
Yeah, February 6th. Isn't that Saturday?
It is.
Okay.
Next Saturday.
Oh, I thought you were thinking
Yeah.
It's a
of
week from.
Right.
a week from, yeah, okay.
Okay, I could possibly lose a month. 2 affordable housing non-brownfield projects are opening in Garfield Township. There will be an open house at 11 o'clock for the Boardman Apartments right behind Station 11 on Veterans Drive. Those were redone by WODA. And at 12:30 will be WODA's grand opening for the Brookside Commons at the intersection of Zimmerman and Long Lake. And the very last thing, I'm sorry, I would have made it an issue. TC Tallis met with MDOT today to move forward on the east-west connectors. And I wanted to update you on that. The Census 2020, 99.99999% chance we will be designated as an MPO by the U.S. Census Bureau, a municipal planning organization. Once we do that, we have access, or once we reach that, another list. Top 10 MPOs. We are eligible for federal tax transportation dollars that we aren't eligible for right now under the Rural Task Force. So basically, our dollars put into TC Tallis, I want to thank this board for supporting that again. We now have a seat at the table. We have no choice whether we're designated an MPO. We are or we aren't. we have no choice whether that table exists. It exists, and now Grand Traverse County sits at that table. Talking with the head of MDOT, who came up today, east-west corridor traffic models is the #1 initiative by this group. So we are going to work on the travel demand models, looking at all the east-west possibilities that we could have. And the main thing that the federal government is looking at is public process. So we'll be seeing a lot of surveys and stuff coming out and public hearings, and everybody support their favorite east-west corridor.
Mr. Crawford?
Okay. Last Thursday, the chair of the board of Northern Lakes Community Mental Health appointed me to be on the board of directors for the Northern Michigan Regional Entity, which brings together the 5 community mental health agencies and sort of the tip of the mitt. I went there today for the first meeting. It seems like it will be a very interesting experience to find out how that all works, how everything for that is all funded, and Medicaid dollars and the dollars the counties put in, and I'm very interested in getting to know that whole process. And because I was appointed by the chair of a different board, I will not be charging Grand Traverse County for any per diems or any mileage or travel for that particular assignment.
Anyone else? All right. I want to take this time to, I don't think anyone can see this, but it's what the sheriff is doing with the city police, crimemapping.com. I really like this tool. You can go to crimemapping.com and plug in Traverse City, Michigan, and you will see that at 3:26 in the morning, someone was arrested for DUI. There was an assault in the 100 block of Hall Street. It will tell you that that there was a fraud at the 100 block of Wellington Street at 6:44 p.m. It will tell you, and you can plug in dates. You can check different address areas. It's a wonderful tool, and I think it's great that we are letting the public know what the officers that we have out there are doing. Anything else for the cause? No notices? All righty. We are adjourned.
Have a good evening, Chris.
Commissioner Cropper, I think we're going to limit you to